16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning.
Hello.
Hello.
We're all here.
We are here because we're here because we're here.
Honk.
Yep. Everyone out there is here too. We're all here.
Okay. Welcome.
Yeah, it's the end of the year.
It is.
Prom, graduation,
Uh-huh.
almost summer vacation time. We'll have one more episode
Almost.
before you are done. Done. But we're almost there.
Yeah, we will. It's quickly running out.
I think we all deserve a break pretty soon. I've been kind of swamped with work as well. It's just been a very, very, very busy time.
Yeah, it has been. I don't know how you measure a brain's activity, but if you measured mine, it would probably just look like a kid with a yarn ball. Just chaos. Like my brain is a yarn ball.
A yarn ball.
Yeah, that's how it feels. Because it's just a million things every direction. And I feel like every time I turn around in my classroom, it's like one more thing.
Yeah. I did the thing that contractors do where they take on a few too many projects all at once because they don't want to be stuck without work to do. That's just the contractor way of life. So I did that. So now I'm just only working. No sleeping, no breathing, no eating, only work. Work is life, life is work. The end.
I feel that. I really feel
also
that.
in this podcast though. Life is also 16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning.
Sleeping.
And sleeping. This week we're going to talk about something kind of light and fluffy and fun because we want the year to be light and fluffy and fun because it's just too much otherwise. So,
had you told me that we were going to dive into Reagan era education, I probably would have blocked your phone number.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have even had
That's
a
one
response.
that's been on our list from almost the very beginning. We want to talk about the effect of the Reagan administration on public education in America, which is just going to require a lot of it. I would love to get a historian in on that episode, maybe just to help us navigate some of those waters because it's such a particular time in history, especially in America. But
yeah, it wasn't literally about that specific thing. It was just that if I had to research a bill, anything that was more than just what I could pull from my brain.
Yeah. Well, we also know that most of our listeners are educators and that they
don't want that right now.
Yeah, you also don't want to listen to a long slog through the Reagan era's impact on education. So
Not right now.
Not right now. When your brain is highly engaged and not at all tired, we'll talk about that.
Future us.
Future us will deal with that problem.
A later Katie, if you will.
Current us, we are going to deal with educators in movies and TV. We talked a little bit about teachers in fiction way back in episode 30. And you actually even mentioned one of the teachers that we're going to talk about today on that episode. But
that we start with.
Yeah. We're going to talk about specifically in the movies and TV sort of our childhood, I guess a lot of it is, giving a retrospective on what some of these educators meant to us growing up, what they mean to us now, and just, some
a
fun
critical
little
lens of
Yeah, we're going to give them, because it's that time of year, we're going to
establish an evaluation system.
Yeah, there's an evaluation system. We're going to give them their year-end evaluations as educators, each one of them. Their impact, whether we think they're good teachers now that we're adults and we can look at things. Yeah, whether or not we...
That might change some things. Yeah.
Because, we don't always have those thoughts when we're absorbing this kind of media as kids. So, we're talking about Matilda and Dead Poet Society and things like that today. So,
Master Yoda.
Yeah, and Star Wars. We're talking about things that impact us very differently when we're young from how they might impact us now.
Also focusing on teachers who aren't creeps. Because I am so tired of that storyline.
You definitely said the same thing in episode 30, I remember. So there are a lot of,
I'm just so mad about it. It's just weak writing at this point. But
it's just very popular and trendy to be dark and gritty right now too, even with fiction, with storytelling and a lot of really popular television. Right now, it's all just make it darker and grittier and
teachers
more
just don't...
Batman-y. creepier Bruce
I like
Wayne.
that you've equated having a relationship with a teacher to being Batman.
No. I not at all. Let me clarify.
Because that's what I'm talking about.
No. I'm just talking about how media seems to be obsessed with dark grittiness. That's all I meant.
And Batman.
I have not seen the new Batman, but I've heard a lot of criticism of it as being just like blandly gritty. It's basically just like nothing is going on and it's gritty and dark and bland.
Really?
I don't know. Yeah.
I've heard it was good.
Oh,
I have
interesting.
not heard dark, gritty, bland.
Well, maybe I
variations.
Maybe I only follow humorless media critics on Twitter.
We get news from very different people. Though.
Humorless people. Those are the people I follow. But anyway,
that's not me.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, not dark and gritty all the time necessarily.
Well, and dark and gritty. I'm sorry, but that mascot has forever ruined the word gritty to me because nothing else is gritty but gritty.
Yeah. Does pose a challenge.
I'm just tired of TV shows and movies making stories out of teachers behaving inappropriately because we don't need any more bad press. You know, we just we're trying to make it. And there's a lot of us that are totally not dark, gritty Batmans, creeps, and anyways, okay. Number 1 on our list.
Oh, you're just jumping right into it. Forget that.
Well, these are just positive, respectable teacher figures.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Please do.
Number 1. This should have been the whole list.
Oh, only one. First and last. Go ahead.
Miss Jennifer Honey.
Miss Jennifer Honey.
From Matilda by Roald Dahl.
Yep.
And she is played by Embeth Davidtz.
Okay, cool.
Embeth Davidtz. Okay, so.
She looks like somebody else, but I don't remember who.
Embeth Davidtz, Miss Honey. I don't know. She's very firmly Miss Honey in my head.
Okay.
But anyways.
Well, this is an extremely formative movie for you personally.
One of the most.
This is like the core memories that come out of, remember that? Inside, what is that one called? Inside Out? Inside Out, the Pixar movie.
I thought you were going to call it In and Out.
In and Out? In and Out Burger?
The burger movie?
The Pixar movie? No,
my core
Inside
memory
Out.
is a double cheeseburger.
My core memory is a side of fries. No, Inside Out, the Pixar movie. It's like a core memory. This movie is like a core memory for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just really quickly. Miss Honey is the hero of the story. Her dad was Magnus Honey and was a prominent doctor, and he died when she was very young and leaves her with his deceased wife's half-sister, who is Agatha Trunchbull.
Agatha Trunchbull.
Trunchbull is the principal at the school where Miss Honey teaches and where Matilda attends school. I don't want to spoil the book or the movie, but it was published in... Well, the book was published in 1988 and the movie in 1996. So if I'm spoiling it, that's on you.
You should catch up.
It's not a spoil anymore. Matilda has crap parents, including very specifically Danny DeVito, and finds happiness and comfort in her local library and her favorite teacher, Miss Honey.
We love a local library.
So Miss Honey is an angel. She spent her whole life overcoming the odds of being raised by a horrible woman and losing both of her parents at a very young age. And somehow she can turn all of that bad into good, making her classroom a magical and bright place where the kids love and trust her. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they know Trunchbull is coming in and they go around and undecorate the whole room because it had been really bright and covered in the kids' paintings and stuff. And Trunchbull didn't want it to be like that. And so Miss Honey had her classroom so that all the kids could flip everything and they'd go back to this boring, ugly place that wasn't very welcoming to education.
That's cute.
As you said, one of my most favorite movies. Probably mostly because my third grade teacher reminded me so much of Miss Honey.
Do you think you can trace a lot of your interest in becoming an educator back to this movie? Is it formative that way?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little different for you because you're a teacher's kid, so you really couldn't escape it no matter what you did.
No, it was my fate.
It was just gonna happen. It was bound to happen.
Yeah. But eventually Miss Honey adopts Matilda, saves her from her crap family, and it's so great. And so for me, Miss Honey is this universal story of students relying on teachers to be more than just teachers. And I think that if you were to look at the learning environment, it's proof that just having a teacher who cares and loves is a big thing and being invested in them. And I just think Miss Honey is great. So that's my official rating. What are we doing this out of? What are we rating them on? 5 out of 5 pencils? What are we doing?
5 out of 5 pencils. How many pencils
Miss Honey gets 10 pencils.
Miss Honey gets 10 pencils.
Okay, so what's your end of the year eval on Miss Honey?
My end of year eval.
Which is far less biased.
My thoughts on Miss Honey are going to be way different from yours because I didn't really watch this movie all the way through with concentration until I was an adult, really.
Like last year.
Yeah. Like last year. I think that was last year when I watched it.
It was.
That was really the first. I mean, I remember it being on as a kid, but I just really never, it wasn't in my rotation for whatever reason. So my first encounters with Miss Honey were as an adult watching this kids movie about this teacher. And I think by the time I got around to it, Miss Honey is more age-wise. She's more like a peer than somebody like an adult that I want to be when I grow up.
I bet Miss Honey is younger than us right now.
Probably. That's disturbing. I don't like that. She probably is younger than we are right now. So she seems more like a peer than somebody I want to eventually grow up to be, or even younger than a peer. But I do really appreciate in general her love of whimsy and adventure. Like you're talking about her classroom decorations.
And when she takes them out to get the newts.
Yeah, that's kind of like adventurous. She's willing to stand up to bullies. Yeah. She's also kind of ornery. She risks getting Matilda into a little bit of trouble with the kind of plan that unfolds throughout the movie. But anyway, she's unafraid to do some things to stand up for what she thinks is right. And I think that I like all of that. Anyway, she's not so much like a folk hero that kids sometimes look up to when they're watching that movie. She's more like, I want to have coworkers who think like this. Like that's how I think of her.
I look at Miss Honey and want to have the relationships that she has with her students.
Well, I was just about to say that I feel like I've heard you express how important that kind of thing is, even in your own day-to-day job. I feel like you do go about your job very much with that in mind and about addressing and educating the whole child and making sure you're there for them in so many different ways from what the popular discourse thinks of. When it thinks of teachers, it does not begin to encompass all the ways that educators are really there for their students. Way beyond school hours. So
okay.
Yeah.
How many pencils do you give Miss Honey?
Oh, I give Miss Honey a lot of pencils.
A lot of pencils.
Yeah.
I don't really think we have a very fair evaluation system, but
no.
Also, I don't think we would have put them on this list if they weren't like mostly okay.
True.
Okay. So next. Okay.
I mean, I guess I should give her 10 out of 5 pencils if that's the baseline. I'll give her.
Yeah, I kind of broke our.
You broke
I broke our evaluation system to start with.
I'll give her 5 out of 5 pencils. I'll follow the rules.
I'll go back to 5. Okay, number 2, John Keating from the Dead Poets Society, which is played by Robin Williams. Oh, gosh, what a good movie. Okay, so Mr. Keating teaches at a fictional elite conservative Vermont boarding school called Welton Academy, and he teaches poetry. That's like one of the big focuses for him. I would imagine he's a literature teacher, but he loves poetry.
When you're growing up, when you read old storybooks about really strict boarding schools and getting rapped on the knuckles with rulers and stuff, that's this kind of school. And the boys are all wearing like really stiff collars and uniforms, and there's
ties,
decorum and rules and mandatory chapel and stuff like that. That's the kind of place we're talking about.
This movie features a very young Robert Sean Leonard, a very young Ethan Hawke, and a young Josh Charles. While I would
babies.
It's babies. While Robin Williams, I'm going to say that was near the prime of his career as Mr. Keating. Keating is not like the other teachers at this very strict boarding school. He jumps on his desks, he screams, he yells, and he does everything he can to make poetry human. We'll keep that one in. That was a good one. That was a good one. What a good girl. Great timing, honey.
That was the dog sounding her barbaric yawp.
And so, because of this like over-the-top approach to teaching, he gets these young men to buy into him, right? It takes a long time for some of them.
Well, they're all also scared. They're rule followers, a lot
They
of them.
are, and they're there because they're expected to do well because they have high expectations from their parents. They have huge societal pressure, peer pressure. And so really, they're just doing their time to get the grades to go on to, you and I mean, whatever.
It's very much a traditional elite private school mentality about everything, including discipline and academics.
Yeah. So the plot of the movie actually does a lot to focus on the stress and pressure of being a young man attending an academy like this. I teach it in public high school, so it's as far from that academy as it can be. But I see the same types of pressures in my students. So I think that those are like universal. And they do a good job of conveying, especially the parental expectations and like the pressures of society and mental health and things like that. Yeah. So it's actually, when I was going back through it, I was kind of impressed with how much it covered. Yeah. Because we're talking like not a time when these conversations were happening. No. Not like they are today.
We should also probably have said this at the beginning, but if you go watch this content note, there are mentions of suicide in the movie. So it's a dark story because we have to cover these pressures that these kids are feeling and facing, and also that the teacher ends up feeling and facing. So the Robin Williams character also ends up feeling pressure to achieve a certain kind of achievement is required from him in this environment, let's just say from his peers and other faculty at the school and from administrators. So everyone's in this academic pressure cooker.
And he's the black sheep for sure. Keating is.
Because he wants kids to have fun.
Yeah, and he wants poetry to be real and human to them and like reveal something about the human condition basically. So eventually the men do take to poetry and they enjoy it. How dare they? I love that part. And they create their own Dead Poets Society. And they thank their teacher by reciting, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," when he comes in. I would say that at the end of the day, the Dead Poets Society is a story of winning students over by meeting them at their level. I think Keating's job is that he can make poetry that is very outdated on the surface be very relevant. And he wins them over by treating them like young adults, which I think is probably the best way to a teenager's heart, is to not treat them like a child.
Definitely, I mean, that was certainly true of me when I was growing up.
For sure. I would say that as far as like movies go of teachers, this is like a dream. Like I used to look at Keating and be like, I want to be a Keating. Not how it goes at the end for him, but the rest of his... yeah. Like when I look inside his four walls of his classroom...
He gets fired for being too unconventional.
Yeah.
Long story short.
Yeah, so that part, not ideal. But
losing your job, not ideal.
But I think in Keating's heart and the heart of those young men, it was all in the exact right place at the exact right time. And I think that's very special. And if you watch it, you will cry and you will laugh and you will feel a lot of things. And I would give Keating 5 pencils of for being, maybe 4 pencils, because I'm going to guess there was something in his contract that said he couldn't do what he was doing. No, I'm just kidding.
4 pencils for breaking contract.
I'm just kidding. You know what I mean, though? Like, I look at him, and he's a teacher that you dream of when you dream of teachers. Yeah. And that's very hard. And also, it's Robin Williams, and he is brilliant.
Yeah. I miss Robin Williams a lot.
And he makes poetry so likable. And I think that's so cool. Okay, so your end of the year evaluation.
My
for
end
Mr.
of the year
Keating.
evals. I give Keating 5 out of 5 pencils also. The fact that he is snubbing his nose at these administrators.
I love that.
These stuffy old guys. That's more points in his favor rather than fewer. I'm that's one of my favorite things about him is that he is unafraid to stand up and tell the stodgy old wanks to shove it where the sun don't shine. And I kind of wish more people had the opportunity to do that. However, it's not easy because, as we see at the end, he loses his job for it. So, it's been a really, really long time since I've seen Dead Poet Society, and I think that there are probably different archetypal teacher movies now. This was like the archetypal teachery movie when we were growing up. People were talking about this, and I also wanted to put on as a kind of runner-up Mr. Holland's Opus, which was definitely in the discourse at that time when we were kids. So that one's about an orchestra teacher winning kids over, basically.
I was also thinking of... Isn't it Good Will Hunting?
Yes. Good Will
that
Hunting.
one also occurred to me as well.
One. Yep. That's another story from the same...
Those are all like in the same range of movies. Like,
so basically I combined all of those into just talking about Dead Poet Society because for some reason in my head they all run together. Yes, definitely Good Will Hunting as well. Yeah. But anyway, these are all 3 driving at the same basic principle, which is that sometimes you have to do a lot of work to unearth curiosity in students.
That's a great way of describing what he does.
I think all of them and all of those bits do. Well, I guess I will say I don't think that the thrust of this movie really hit me as a kid because I was a little too close to the student who would have been uncomfortable breaking the rules because I was like so obsessed with achievement in school that I was just like, what is everybody like? What? not that I'm not having fun, but what is the big deal here? Like, why do we need to stand up and yell? Like, why do we need to...
Why are we screaming C's a day?
Yeah. So, but I think it's kind of like later on in college and in grad school that I learned how to enjoy myself a bit more. So, again, I find myself...
Oh.
Well, again, now...
so sad.
I know, but now I look at Keating and I'm like, oh, I like that he's ornery and I like that he's unafraid to point out policies and stodginess.
But back then, that would have been your rule-following brain was like, just do your job.
I mean, I wasn't quite as bad as, what's the kid's name, Cameron in the movie? The one that turns him in, kind of.
Yeah.
I wasn't as bad as that because I enjoyed breaking rules when I thought that administrators were being stuffy old fools, which was more often than not. But I still felt myself being in that pressure cooker.
Sure.
So I felt, once again, this was just the way this movie fell with when I first consumed it. I was definitely more on the side of the kids who needed the break rather than in the teacher trying to fight the good fight.
For sure. That's fair.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now and see how I feel about it at this stage in my life. You know?
I don't know if my heart could handle it right now.
Yeah, I might wait till we're a little bit more out of the pandemic and that kind of, the dark grittiness. Mm-hmm. Okay, you want to jump to our next educator in film?
This was one of your choices for our list.
Yeah.
So Chelsea chose Master Yoda from Star Wars.
Master Yoda.
And he is a legendary Jedi Master and had one of the strongest connections with the Force.
You're saying that I chose this, but really this was just like a me for you choosing kind of thing. Because Kate is of the two of us is the outsized Star Wars fan.
So most recently, Yoda became famous again because he's the same species as Grogu, who everyone calls Baby Yoda, from The Mandalorian and from the Book of Boba Fett. In Star Wars, Yoda is the mentor of some of the most powerful Jedi ever, including Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Luke Skywalker. And on the Star Wars Wikipedia, they had this really great flowchart of all the master-apprentice relationships stemming from Yoda.
Oh, wow.
Stemming from Yoda. And essentially, if you are attached to the Force in any way, you are by proxy Yoda affiliated. Is how I would say it.
Yeah. He's sort of the patriarch of the Jedi Order in a lot of ways.
And so that includes like Mace Windu and the younglings, rest in peace, and Anakin. Not great. Mm-hmm. So, as I was trying...
Anakin becomes Darth Vader, for those of you who haven't seen it.
Yeah. But,
just in case you didn't know that.
Well, and I started to think, I was like, can I really assess him as a teacher? Because I'm like way too big of a fan, right? Like I couldn't possibly evaluate Yoda. So I found this hilarious article called Was Yoda a Good Teacher? And it's by John Spencer, and he created the pros and cons list of whether Yoda was a good teacher.
Okay, yes. And I read through these.
It's so funny.
I read through these. I think there's something to them.
Okay.
I agree with his assessment.
Let's start with the bad.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
So was Yoda a good teacher? The bad things about Yoda. He promoted a fixed mindset, which we know isn't good.
Yeah, and by that we probably mean that he had a very rigid moral structure and a very rigid discipline was core to everything he did, and there was not much coloring outside of the lines for his students.
It's black and white.
But again, that's a little difficult because in the Star Wars world, discipline is basically what you're training yourself to do.
Because you have to be able to use the Force for your own good.
The whole thing you're doing is building up discipline. Yeah. So it can feel a little stodgy, a little limiting at times, I would bet.
Okay, so the second reason he was a bad teacher, he believed that there were good and bad students. So he believed that Anakin's character was permanent.
Yeah.
And that ended up proving true because he turns into Darth Vader, but... The article was basically arguing that had Yoda been a better teacher, he might have been able to, sway Anakin. So
this is the main part of my end of year eval for Yoda, by the way.
Yoda?
This point right here, this thing that he's made up his mind kind of about who's got the good juju and the bad juju. Those are, I have some bones to pick with Master Yoda.
I wouldn't tell him that, but okay. He praised results over effort. This is something that I actually deeply agree with. Because it didn't matter how hard they were trying to use the Force. True. The only thing that mattered to him was if they did it.
Okay.
Okay? Do you disagree?
No, I just think it's funny to think of it that way.
And the last bad reason is not even a reason worth mentioning, but I love that John Spencer included it in this article, but it says his horrible syntax and constant muttering made him hard to understand.
Not so much with the elocution.
Okay, so what's good about Yoda? He kept the learning relevant and hands-on.
I suppose so.
Life or death makes it very relevant.
Don't think you really had much of a choice, but
Okay.
yes, he sure did.
He cares about Luke and believed in him, even when Luke didn't believe in himself. He does believe in Luke. He believes in Luke like almost to a fault, I would say at times. He always provided just enough help, and he did let Luke struggle, because that's when you learn best. He never took too much of it. If that makes sense.
The scene with the trainers. Remember those little things that shoot little darts at Luke?
Yeah.
Wasn't Yoda in one of those? Or was that just with Han on the Falcon? I can't remember, but there were a series of things that Yoda made him do that were just kind of like frustrating to him. You could see him struggling.
No, I think that was with Yoda.
But anyway, the point of that was just that there definitely are times where he's made to struggle because it's like, oh, it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's not great.
Well, sometimes it is.
Kill you, it does.
People. Yeah, kill you, it does. Okay.
Okay, and I think this is a big pro for Yoda, but he provided personalized learning. Who's to argue with that?
Very differentiated Jedi instruction. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, think about all of the Jedi that come from Yoda. Am I evaluating Yoda out of lightsabers?
Yeah, how many lightsabers out of 5?
I really feel like I can't evaluate Yoda.
You don't have the objectivity to do this?
I do not. I'm going to say like 4 out of 5 lightsabers.
Okay.
I do agree with the horrible syntax and the muttering, but also the results over effort, I think, is really crucial for a teacher. But I also understand that for Yoda, the results were either using the Force or not. And that also leads to dying or not. So high stakes, for sure. High stakes testing, if you will. Very high stakes.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little harsh on Yoda. I'm only going to give him 3 out of 5 lightsabers. And the reasons for this, now, it's not because I don't like Yoda, because I love Yoda and would enjoy hanging out with Yoda and training with Yoda. However,
Fight you.
While I think that Yoda would be good for me personally, I don't think that Yoda appeals to a broad subset of learners.
No.
I think that Yoda has a very specific kind of student that he would match with well, and that beyond that, he would struggle to communicate with students who perhaps approach discipline from a different angle. So I also think the thing about making up his mind about good students and bad students, I mean, I'm saying it in terms of students, but for him, it was just sort of like Anakin. People. Like, you're a good person or you're a bad person.
Yeah.
And I also think that this is another criticism of the Jedi way of training and being, is that there's a really strong emphasis placed on this moral dichotomy. So there's just good and bad. There's evil and
light and dark.
There are heroes and there are evil people. There are and I think that we actually see that in the movies and in the storyline of Star Wars fall apart. The world order that is set up on this very stringent dichotomy of good and evil completely collapses. Like, the Jedi Order falls apart.
Look at Ben. That's like all the proof you need.
Ben Kenobi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's exactly that. That's his whole story.
I think the point of it all is that looking at the world that way and raising a whole generation of young kids into that black and white struggle, it kind of feels like religious or moral absolutism or nationalism. It feels like this way of moving through the world that is uninterested in everything that has been considered wrong or immoral or unjust. Yeah. And I think that even within the Star Wars canon, it proves itself to be dangerous. And I think that it's also dangerous in the real world, as we might be seeing now. So those are my deep, dark thoughts on the Star Wars canon.
He's got
Master Yoda.
He's got good aim, so I'm just going to.
So you gave him 4 out of 5 lightsabers. I gave him 3 out of 5 lightsabers.
Maybe I'm siding too much with the teachers. As a person who gets evaluated, I'm very sensitive to it. So,
well, yes. Like I said, though, I did want to preface that with, I personally really like Yoda, like as a character in Star Wars. And I think it would be fun to have him as a teacher. But I personally respond well to that sort of
and
style.
Others don't.
Yeah.
Because like Luke didn't for a while.
No, he didn't. I think there are plenty of Jedi for whom that just doesn't work. And I think that Yoda could have been more sensitive to that and possibly averted catastrophe.
Could he have? Yeah, but Yoda's not going to...
I mean, he could have kept the galaxy together, you know?
This is the way.
This is the way.
Okay. Number 4.
Gotta move on.
Big switch.
Yeah, sorry.
Big switch.
It's a downshift from Nerdland.
Okay. Miss Sharon Norbury. from Mean Girls, played by Tina Fey. Another favorite of mine, this list is very biased. Another favorite of mine, because this movie came out in 2004. We were the perfect age for this movie when it came out. It was my entire high school. 4 years.
Yeah, it was very popular with my high school too.
Yeah. Like my friends and I, we all, I mean, still to this day, if you turn on the movie, I would quote the whole thing. So, long story short, Mean Girls is a story of exactly that, a school full of mean girls. And Tina Fey's character, Miss Norbury, is the calculus teacher and the coach of the mathletes. She's basically just made fun of the entire movie and serves as a punching bag.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
And she was wasn't she one of the writers on this movie?
She's a producer and a writer.
Okay. Yeah. So she's making fun of herself. She does a lot of self-deprecating humor.
She does.
Tina Fey, in general.
Yeah, so she means really well. And she does a lot of good work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tina Fey. But
yeah, Tina Fey means well. It's fine.
This is just
she means well.
A Tina Fey support group at this point. Okay, so Miss Norbury, she means really well. She does a lot of good work for the school and to make the students aware that their treatment of each other is really awful and that how women are spoken to is harmful. She has the best of intentions. Unfortunately, the humor of the movie really takes away from her well-meaning and good intentions, right? Like, she really is trying to teach these young women a lesson, and she's trying to help them see their own worth. And she's trying to do it in a way that the movie doesn't really make productive just because of the absolute ridiculousness of her job. Well, like, she's trying to, like, in one scene, like, she got, I think it's like coffee on her shirt, and she's like trying to take off the sweater and the whole thing sticks, and so like it's just like her and her bra. The humor of her is so outrageous that the lessons that she's teaching aren't super strong or like poignant or something because she's just so funny. So coming from Tina Fey, it's so hard to be like, this is my very serious teacher who's trying to teach me about how to respect women, because it's Tina Fey being hilarious.
But I also think that she does, the movie does do something about capturing the truly chaotic nature of trying to help teenagers be better people.
It's absolute chaos.
It's like I put in my notes here about this one is that I think Mean Girls is probably the closest to an accurate portrayal of what it's like to be a teacher in public school in modern America, because it's just chaos and backstabbing on social media all the time, which in the movie's case would be like the burn book basically, but you know, it's just like chaos and like when you try to do things to help, they end up backfiring because kids are kids and will do nasty things to avoid getting caught for misbehaving. And so anyway, I think it's probably the most realistic portrayal of what it's like dealing with discipline in a public school right now.
My high school actually does candygrams at Valentine's Day, just like they do in Mean Girls. And every year when it happens, I'm always like, none for you, Gretchen Wieners. And, you know, like, you go and cook. I, like, do all of those things, and my kids never get it. And I tell my coworkers, I'm like, we're actually living Mean Girls. Like, we truly let the kids go and buy these things and get delivered in the middle of class, and they can put whatever name to whoever name. I thought that was like some funny. Did we not learn? I thought that was like some funny trope of the movie, and then my actual school still does it. And every year I'm like, none for you, Gretchen Wieners.
Oh yeah, I got delivered a rose in the middle of English class in like 6th grade.
Oh, love.
No, do you know how horrifying that is?
Love.
Somebody came down from the office, walked into the room, stopped class to talk to the teacher at her desk, and then the teacher was like, okay, you come with me out into the hall. And I had to go out by myself like I was in trouble, where she gave me this rose from this kid. And it was yellow.
Like it was sold from the school?
Yeah, I wish I could remember.
No, that was just a kid who gave you a rose.
No, they were like, they had little. Like,
you were the only kid in the whole class that got a rose?
No, I wasn't the only one who got them. It's just that this kid had a crush on me at the time, and it was mortifying.
That he got you a rose.
Well, it was mortifying that the school didn't realize that setting it up to deliver them to people in the middle of class while it was on display and very obvious what was happening could be actually a bad thing.
Love.
He was a sweet kid though, but I wasn't into it.
In 6th grade.
At the time.
Okay, well, you lived it as well.
Yeah, we all lived it.
None for you.
None for me. Anyway, Mean
Bye.
Girls.
That's what they say when they walk out.
Bye.
None for you, Gretchen Wieners. Bye. And they just leave the room. But ultimately, I think she means very, very well. I think she actually does tell a good story of teaching in a high school, like you mentioned. And she really is trying to teach these young women that their treatment of each other is just horrible.
Yeah, I feel
and that
like
they should be more, so I like the universal truths of what she's doing.
I feel like I've watched you go through some of this with your kids. It's almost like the more well-intentioned you are in a given scenario, the more you're setting yourself up for failure, because it's going to backfire 100%. In some really spectacular way. Either your admin's not going to support you, or the kids are going to tell their parents something else other than what happened, or the parents are going to scream at you anyway because they're just parents. Or it's very...
And there are a couple scenes where Miss Norbury's just like talking in the void, and I just feel that deeply.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I wouldn't say it's an overwhelmingly optimistic film, but it is a funny one. It's funny.
It ends with a girl getting hit by a school bus.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the funny parts, if you can believe it.
I would agree. I'm just not sure that I'm... She gets clobbered by a school bus. Okay.
You're just Girls reliving it in your head, aren't you?
A lot. They get a lot of pencils.
Very satisfying thunk.
Don't have sex, you'll get pregnant.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 4 out of 5 pencils on the if we're just rating the teacher being a teacher, I'm gonna give her 4 out of 5 pencils.
I agree.
It's just the scenario, the whole thing is just kind of set up for failure. She makes her do mathletes after that, so she makes her make up for being a mean girl by being in the mathletes again, and so it's a good moral of the story. Funny. But in terms of her being she's not like a top tier teacher, but she definitely is a teacher who's doing her best in a very realistic setting of bullying and teenage hormones.
100%.
So, okay. All right.
Number 5.
Yes.
Mr. George Feeney from Boy Meets World.
Feeney!
Played by William Daniels. So, he was the elementary teacher for the whole squad, including Corey, Sean, and Topanga. And then he became the principal at the high school where they attend.
Yeah, he got retconned into being their teacher like their entire lives.
Yeah.
But he was really originally only like their 6th grade teacher or something.
Yeah. So, on top of being their former teacher and now principal, he is also the Matthews neighbor, adding to the relationships with everyone, which I also believe was just another way for them to still have a Feeney connection.
Mm-hmm.
So, Feeney was a dream teacher and a mentor. He was kind and considerate, calm and respectful, and he had a great way with words. He
was an orator, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
He would make grand speeches.
He would, and they were beautiful. But
I mean, I always remember sitting in like rapt attention whenever it came time for the Feeney speech. It was like, its own section of an episode.
Yeah.
It would be like, they'd kind of ramp you up into this, everybody get ready, a Feeney
Everyone's
speech is coming.
about to learn.
And you just sit there and you just stare at this guy because he's so commanding when he talks.
Yeah, he is. So the show really, I would say, really revolves around Feeney and his relationship with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the age gap and what makes it seem like there would be no connections between these groups, and how he actually is one of the most important people to them all.
Yeah, I think that's less common in modern comedic TV settings that revolve around schools and stuff. I think the age gap between students and their teachers is often it gets shrunk, and I think a lot of that is on purpose for storytelling reasons, because it's supposedly maybe more relatable to have a younger educator.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is true here, and that for us, when we were growing up, this show being a big part of our young TV life, probably, it's just like that was the model of it was somebody who was like supposedly older and wiser.
Yeah.
He's kind of world weary in a way. He knows his way around, but he's kind of old school in a lot of ways. But I really like him.
Totally old
interesting.
School.
Yeah.
And what I think is really cool about Mr. Feeney is that he's the last character seen on screen, and he delivers the last line of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I included in my evaluation that I would love for Feeney to be my boss.
Yeah.
And I think that's a high compliment. I think that's an automatic 5 pencil review.
Yeah.
Because there are not many people that I would willingly say, I would love for you to be my boss. But I would take Feeney.
Mm-hmm. Feeney.
That's what.
Feeney.
But I would totally take Feeney. And I think, he's a great actor, which just makes him so good in the shows anyways. But
the thing that I said about him, I would also give him 5 out of 5 pencils. The other thing that I said about him is that and I mean, maybe this sets up unrealistic expectations for educators, but he's a kind of archetypal, always on teacher. Like he's always in teacher Feeney mode. Like he's always the wise older person that you go to with advice. In fact,
he's working in his garden, and he has like a life lesson. His wife has been dead for a long time, and like it's just part of his whole learning is like
he'll even do things like get a little upset if he notices that there's some drama going on and nobody's come to him for like advice or something. Like that's kind of
he values his role.
He knows that he is there to dispense the thoughts and wisdom that makes the kids in the show feel better about the big life changes they're all going through just as they grow up and as they turn into young adults. But yeah, no, I really like him. I like, Boy Meets World is interesting because it was such like a boy-centric, it really felt like a boy-centric TV show. Just the main cast of characters. It was like Topanga was there as the girlfriend a lot of times. So it felt kind of rowdy and reckless, some of the stuff that focused on Corey and Sean and everything, to watch that show as a kid. And I was
Eric, wasn't that the brother?
Yeah, Eric, the football kid, and
the older brother. Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, it's a typical a small town American family. It feels like a lot of families around where I grew up with these kids just navigating teenage years and school and growing up and going off to college and all of these things. Yeah. But yeah, I would say Feeney's more like a old school kind of authoritarian, but one who earns the respect of his students for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. And honorable mention on our list. This made you laugh.
It did.
Okay. My honorable mention, Miss Annie Hayworth in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Yep.
Played by Suzanne Pleshette. She is honorable mention of my list because, of course, she was murdered by a flock of birds. And it feels like a political statement about education. And that's all I have to say about Miss Annie Hayworth.
Being a teacher is getting murdered by a flock of birds every day I go into my job.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's all I have for Miss Annie Hayworth. Her death was not necessary.
Okay, so fun fact about the birds.
But just fueled this ridiculous movie about birds.
Yes.
Okay.
No, fun fact about this movie that I learned while I was researching is that it was added to the Library of Congress for being a culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant piece of art selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. So just keep that in mind.
I just like you forgot that it was the teacher that got murdered by the birds.
I haven't seen this movie in a long time.
I was like, of course it's the teacher that got murdered by a flock of birds.
I have not seen this movie in a long time, and the first time I saw it, I was probably a little too young because it creeped me out. I do not get it, I do not like it.
I think it's maybe the scariest Hitchcock.
Yes. After that, I watched a lot of other Hitchcock, and I'm like, why do people like this? And then every other movie, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. But The Birds, I was just like, no, this is just weird and scary.
Gosh. It's so well done. But anyways, honorable mention, like I said, Miss Annie Hayworth, just because of her dedication, education, and her
willingness to go down with the ship. She died.
She tried to help her students too. Yeah,
she died protecting some kids.
She did, and I just think that there's a lot to be said about teaching with her.
I think we're gonna leave that one up to our listeners' imagination.
Her very untimely death.
Yeah.
Also, if you think that was a spoiler, this literally came out in like the 60s.
Yeah, something like that.
Leave me alone. Okay. Well,
are we ready to?
Are we not evaluating?
Oh,
5 out of 5.
Don't even know.
Hero.
I guess 5 out of 5 for getting killed by birds.
She was helping her students.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes.
I'm not evaluating her death.
6 out of 12 out of 1.
6 out of 12? That's only 50%. 12, she deserves better for
17, 17 out of 5 lightsabers for
Annie Pleshette. Or Annie Hayworth, played by Suzanne Pleshette. Okay. Woo!
Okay.
That was my favorite one. I couldn't wait to get to that.
Yeah, we're going to have to rewatch that.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay.
I can do that.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Last episode's question.
Yes, fill in the blank.
You want to do it?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. The term edutainment has a history in the hip-hop community. It was first made popular amongst the hip-hop community by KRS-One, aka The Teacher, thanks to his album by the same name. What was the name of the group that made the album Edutainment? The group was one that basically set the stage for gangster rap. And it was Boogie Down Productions.
Boogie Down Productions.
All right, this episode's question?
Yes, this is episode. And if you know the answer, write in and say hi to us. hello@16to1.com, all spelled out.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello at 16.
Hello. This episode's question. In 1984, President Reagan announced the Teacher in Space program aiming to inspire students, honor teachers, and spur interest in mathematics, science, and space exploration. More than 40,000 applications were mailed to interested teachers, with 11,000 teachers completing the application and submitting it to NASA. The program was discontinued in 1990 following the death of its first participant, who was killed in the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster on January 28th, 1986. This teacher has been memorialized by more than 40 schools around the world, now carrying her name. Craters on the Moon and Venus are also named after her. Craters. I'm going to get a crater named after me someday.
Yeah,
Craters on the Moon and Venus are also named after her, as are countless education centers, technology conferences, awards, and scholarships. What was that teacher's name? Teacher who was on the Challenger crew.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So what was her name?
Okay. What did you learn this week?
Have you read what I put?
I'm just reading it now, and let me tell you, this is news to me.
Is that 16 to 1 appropriate?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, we're not crude about it.
Well, I won't be.
Uh-huh.
I spend a period of every day in like a small group room working with other teachers that I don't normally get to teach with, obviously. And we do tutoring and, all kinds of things. But I've learned a lot in being around people, our friends, I would say mostly don't have children, whereas my coworkers mostly do. So it's a very different world for me when I go to work, because I'm learning a lot of things I didn't know about raising young children. Whereas our friends, we're just talking about
you and I
food.
Not having children, we tend to group up with other people who do not have children.
Right.
Although I would say a growing number of our friends.
Joining
the kid camp.
But it just so happens that at work I'm surrounded by mostly people who do have children. And today I learned that when a woman is ready to stop breastfeeding, that one of the age-old tricks to dry up their milk is to put cabbage on their breasts.
Cabbage?
Yeah.
What does that do?
It dries it up.
That's weird.
I thought that they were all kidding with me.
Okay, is this a wives' tale? I feel like we have to look this up.
One moment. I can quote 3 different teachers who all confirmed it.
Okay.
Wow. I started with why does cabbage, and the first results were make you gassy, make you fart, make you poop. Hurt my stomach. Why does cabbage stop milk production? Okay, there's a bunch of hits on this. Mastitis is a painful condition that affects about 10% of breastfeeding women. It's especially common during the first weeks of breastfeeding during your weaning process. Okay. The benefits of cabbage. Cabbage is an effective home remedy for mastitis. Cabbage is even more effective than ice packs or other popular treatments for easing painful engorgement. There are many benefits to using cabbage leaves for mastitis. Cabbage is easy to use, natural and safe, inexpensive, and effective at reducing pain and swelling.
Wow.
It can help you continue breastfeeding your baby longer if you need to. They're not sure why it's so effective.
Okay.
It says that cabbage, like other vegetables, contains anti-inflammatory properties, which are likely to play a role. What is certain is that cabbage leaves have helped women ease pain from mastitis and engorgement for a very long time.
Huh. Who knew?
You're supposed to use green cabbage. I can give you the instructions if you want them.
I'm good. I don't need them.
Yeah, it says you'll feel relief within 30 minutes of applying cabbage leaves.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is kind of strange, and I did
obviously
not know that.
It says if you're allergic to cabbage, not to do it.
Don't do this if you're allergic to the thing.
I was sitting there and I was like, there's no chance this is real. And all 3 women in the room were like, that's true.
Okay.
So I learned that today. That's so interesting.
I did not know that.
Okay. I'll let you go now.
Oh, okay.
Very, very normal.
Well, I'm going to share something I learned researching for this episode, and it is about the birds. So, sorry to bring us back to that dark and depressing film for the final thoughts here, but
I should have worn my birds t-shirt.
You should have. We'll have to take a picture and post you in the show notes.
I think I have it.
So the film was partly inspired by true events of a mass bird attack. What?
Yeah.
Ew!
Yep.
On the seaside town of Capitola in California in August 18th, 1961, when the residents awoke to a scene that seemed straight out of a horror movie. Hordes of seabirds were dive bombing homes, crashing into cars, and spewing half-digested anchovies onto lawns.
That's my worst nightmare.
Ew! Alfred
Anchovies.
Hitchcock. Ew. Alfred Hitchcock heard of this event and used it as research material for his film, which was then in progress. The real cause of the birds' behavior was toxic algae.
Oh.
But that wasn't known in the 60s. Wow.
I have visited Bodega Bay, which was the filming location for the birds. And I visited the schoolhouse, and they have little Hitchcocks everywhere. Big fan of Hitchcock there. Lots of birds. They're not wrong. Beautiful town. One of the coolest views of the Pacific. Very, very cool area. I bought Tippi Hedren wine there.
Wine.
They have Tippi everywhere. They love her.
Yeah.
She's on like shirts. She's on literally everything.
Billboards, keychains.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very touristy.
Totes.
But Bodega Bay is really neat, and that's where it was filmed. You can go up to the old school and take pictures in front of it. I'll find some pictures of me there. It was really cool to visit.
Yeah, I'd like to see
I
it.
had recently got into a big Hitchcock rewatch at that point, and was in just north of San Francisco.
You and I have talked about doing that again. We should maybe move that up on our list.
I would love to.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's one of my favorite areas to visit, but that's where it was filmed. And it was kind of fun. This was years ago. I was there now, but it was kind of funny because it's definitely like some of the locals like tell you what it was like when they were filming, and they're like these old dudes who just like sit outside the little store and like
they look like Hemingway. They're like
and they'll be like, oh, Hitchcock,
old leathery
did,
skin.
It's funny. So it's kind of cool to see that stuff.
Neat.
Yeah,
cool.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah. Final thoughts on all of these big screen teachers.
No, I could rewatch a few of these movies right now, and I think that might be nice.
Maybe just take some time for yourself and kick back and relax. As soon as you all are out for your school years, make sure you take some time for yourself and relax, and maybe get caught up on some movies.
Woo,
just for fun.
Take some time for you.
Yep.
The weather's getting nice. Maybe a nice little walk.
Sure is. We've been doing a lot of gardening work.
We have been. It's been very rewarding work.
It is.
It does bring me a lot of happiness to work in our yard.
My body hurt so much the first day we were in the yard, but it felt good to do that kind of work. So.
It's a good feeling to take care of something that,
Yep.
I just like that. And our last thing, we have bird nests, and we are bird moms.
Do.
Very invested in their lives.
Finches
very
and robins.
Concerned about the one who's in a hanging basket because all it does is spin around.
Yeah, the wind whips that thing around. I think Mama's going to get vertigo.
I just see her little head like, oh God, here I go again. And it's like...
The wind kicks up and she just spins around like it's it's sitting on a sit and spin. And she's trying to nurture some eggs.
Babies to hatch and get them out of there.
Poor little babies.
No, I just... it's just, fun stuff right now.
Yeah.
So.
Spring is sprung.
Little victories and little things that make you feel good. So
cool.
We will see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. See you in 2 weeks for our last one of your school year.
Whee!
Yeah. All right. Talk to you next time. Bye. Thanks for supporting 16 to 1.
We're trying to grow our audience, so please check us out at 16to1.com, all spelled out, and tell your friends about the show.
On our website, you can find links to follow us on social media, an archive of all our old episodes, and a contact form where you can get in touch.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next show. Feeny! Fee-he-he-he-me.